wait at the station till Edward and his train came in. This made him cross. Late again? Edward laughed, and James fumed away. After James had finished his work, he went back to the yard and popped onto the turntable. He was still feeling very bad-tempered. "Edward is impossible," he grumbled to the others. "He clanks about like a lot of old iron, and he is so slow he makes us wait." Thomas and Percy were indignant. "Old iron? Slow? Why, Edward could beat you in a race any day." "Really?" said James. "I should like to see him do it." Next morning, James's driver was suddenly taken ill. He could hardly stand, so the fireman uncoupled James ready for shunting. James was impatient. Suddenly the signalman shouted. There was James puffing away down the line. "All traffic halted," he announced at last. Then he told the fireman what had happened. 2 boys were on James's footplate fiddling with the controls. Phew! They tumbled off and ran when James started. The signalman answered the telephone. "Yes, he's here. Right. I'll tell him. The inspector's coming at once. He wants a shunter's pole and a coil of wire rope." "What for?" wondered the fireman. "Search me, but you'd better get them quickly." The fireman was ready when Edward arrived. The inspector saw the pole and the rope. "Good man, jump in." "We'll catch him, we'll catch him," puffed Edward. James was laughing. What a lark, he chuckled to himself. Suddenly he was going faster and faster. He realized that he had no driver. "What shall I do? I can't stop! Help! Help!" We're coming, called Edward. Edward was panting up behind with every ounce of steam he had. At last he caught up with James. "Steady, Edward," called his driver. The inspector stood on Edward's front, holding a noose of rope in the crook of the shunter's pole. He was trying to slip it over James's buffer. The engine swayed and lurched. "At last! Got him!" he shouted. He pulled the noose tight. Gently braking, Edward's driver checked the engine's speed, and James's fireman scrambled across and took control. On the way, the weather changed. Wind and rain buffeted Edward. His standing gear failed, and his fireman rode in front, dropping sand on the rails by hand. Suddenly, Edward's wheels slipped fiercely. With a shrieking crack, something broke. The crew inspected the damage. Repairs took some time. "One of your crank pins broke, Edward," said his driver. "We've taken your side rods off. Now you're like an old-fashioned engine. Can you get these people home? They must start back tonight." "I'll try, sir," promised Edward. Edward puffed and pulled his hardest, but his wheels kept slipping and he could not start the heavy train. The passengers were anxious. Driver, fireman and guard went along the train, making adjustments between the coaches. We've loosened the couplings, Edward. Now you can pick your coaches up one by one, just as you do with trucks. That will be much easier, said Edward. One day Thomas was in the yard. Suddenly he heard an engine whistling, "Help! Help!" A goods train came rushing through much too fast. The engine was James, and he was frightened. His brake blocks were on fire. They're pushing me, he panted. On, laughed the trucks. Still whistling, "Help! Help!" Poor James disappeared. I'd like to teach those trucks a lesson, said Thomas the tank engine. Soon came the alarm. James is off the line. The breakdown train, quickly! Thomas was coupled on, and off they went. Thomas worked his hardest. Hurry, 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 he puffed. He wasn't pretending to be like Gordon. He really meant it. Bother those trucks and their tricks. I hope poor James isn't hurt. James's driver and fireman were feeling him all over to see if he was hurt. Never mind, James, they said. It wasn't your fault. It was those wooden brakes they gave you. We always said they were no good. Edward went off to do some shunting. Edward liked shunting. It was fun playing with trucks. He would come up quietly and give them a push. Then he would stop and the silly trucks would go bump into each other. "Oh!" they cried. "Whatever is happening?" Edward played till there were no more trucks. Then he stopped to rest. Presently he heard a whistle. Gordon was very cross. Instead of nice shining coaches, he was pulling a lot of very dirty trucks. "A goods train, a goods train, a goods train," he grumbled. "The shame of it, the shame of it, oh, the shame of it." Edward laughed and went to find some more trucks. Then there was trouble. "Gordon can't get up the hill," the porter called to Edward's driver. "Will you take Edward and push him, please?" They found Gordon halfway up and very cross. His driver and fireman were talking to him severely. "You're not trying." "I can't do it," said Gordon. "The noisy trucks hold an engine back so." Edward's driver came up. "We've come to push." "No use at all," said Gordon. "You wait and see," replied Edward's driver. They brought the train back to the bottom of the hill. "I'm ready," said Edward. "No good," grumbled Gordon. They pulled and pushed as hard as they could. "I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it," puffed Gordon. "I will do it, I will do it, I will do it," puffed Edward. Edward pushed and puffed and puffed and pushed as hard as ever he could. And almost before he realized it, Gordon found himself at the top of the hill. "I've done it, I've done it, I've done it," he said proudly. He forgot all about Edward and didn't wait to say thank you. Edward was left out of breath and far behind. He ran on to the next station, and there he found that the driver and fireman were very pleased with him. The fireman gave him a nice long drink, and the driver said, "I'll get out my paint tomorrow and give you a beautiful coat of blue with red stripes. Then you'll be the smartest engine in the shed."